Welcome. This is the digital participant guide one more time. If you haven't gotten it, this is at that bit.ly. I will drop that one more time. And then again, at the end, I'll drop the attendance again if you didn't have a chance to fill it out. Okay, so these are just our beliefs that we do believe in an effective instruction, equitable access and outcomes and excellence. And as part of our plan, we are dedicated to instructional delivery and design. When we say all in Dallas ISD, we do mean all. That means everyone that is sitting in our Dallas ISD classrooms gets the Tier 1 instruction, curriculum, and instruction. And for us, our Tier 1 curriculum is Amplify. Today, we're going to preview the Q4. We're going to look at some grammar pieces, and then we're going to talk about lesson pacing, and then I'm going to share some resources as well in the end. Okay, so our learning objective today is I'm learning about the Amplify units for Q4. Can someone come off mute to read success criteria 1 for us?
I can explain what Amplify units and topics will be covered in Q4.
Thank you. Success criteria 2, someone else?
I can use SCR writing prompts in my instruction.
Perfect. Thank you. Success criteria 3?
I can prioritize questions within the lessons to help with pacing.
Awesome. And then success criteria 4?
I can locate resources that may support me with my instruction.
Thank you. Yes. And so we'll engage in all of these things today so that you have understanding of what's coming up in Q4, how you can do SCR prompts, prioritizing questions, and what resources are available to you from our department. So we're going to go into success criteria 1, and that is just going over what is upcoming in Q4. We're going to focus on 3rd grade for a minute for demonstration purposes, but as always, the 4th and 5th grade are linked into the, it's linked onto your participant guide and will be linked into the presentation, which we'll share with you at the end. So here's some what's coming up for 3rd grade preview for Q4. We know that Unit 9 will have early exploration of North America. Goes into Unit 10 of Colonial America, and then Unit 11 of the Jazz Age. What I want you to do is I want you to look at some of the topics that are going to be skills and knowledge that are going to be talked about within these units. Just go ahead and just look at them and then think about what you notice either between them or individually, and then I'll ask you to share out here in a minute. So just look at what's coming up for 3rd grade preview. I know we're just using this as demonstration purposes. We do have 4th and 5th that we'll give you later, but just look at what's coming up in these units. What connections do you see or maybe differences? What are we noticing either between or in these units? You can come off mute to let me know, or you can just drop it in the chat and I will look to see what we have to say. Just what are your noticing, either unit to unit connection, what's going on within the units, or what's different about the units?
I see context clues throughout all 3 units. In the middle, it doesn't actually say context clues, but actually talking about context clues. But yeah, so really word meaning, context clues, so vocabulary for sure.
Yes. Go ahead.
Each unit has a writing piece, but each writing piece is different.
Right. So we see the writing amongst all of them, even though they're different. Awesome. Any other noticings? Oh, I see chronological from a historical aspect and then grammar, of course. Perfect. Thank you for sharing in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll look at what these connections are. So we see that early exploration of North America, the explorers' motivations and interactions of the settler with the Native Americans. We see that that's going to tie into colonial America when they start going into the 13 colonies, the regions, Declaration of Independence, and of course our Revolutionary War. But what's different is that our Unit 11 will then focus on jazz. So the Jazz Age, great cultural, but does not have to do with the exploration, but we do have some of a cultural piece here. So that's what's different. Another thing was mentioned was the context clues. We see that they're almost throughout, even though part of it is going to be the definitions and parts of speech. So that is different. Yes, navigation through historical pieces continue chronologically. So we get that chronological. Understanding and use prefixes such as pro and anti, which will tie into our affixes. So affixes being our pre, suffix, root words. And then, yes, our writings will be different. So they're going to do an opinion piece, which is like an argumentative in Unit 9. Unit 10 is about narrative. So they're going to go back to narrative. And then in 11, they're going to have to do an informational piece. So that is some difference. And then just to highlight the unit assessments, we know we see a unit assessment for lesson 14 in Unit 9. And then for Unit 10, it'll be lesson 16. And then I didn't highlight the end of year assessment because those are optional depending on what your campus decided to do for the end of year assessment, since we do map. Okay. Any questions about this preview before we go on? And like I said, for fourth grade, for fourth and fifth, we did the same thing. I'm going to briefly go through this. So we see that we have geology and energy, which is both science, but then we go into a novel study, which is Hello Universe, which is different just because it's a novel study. Again, for the modes of writing, they're going to have to draft an informational pamphlet or a wiki entry. Another thing is in Unit 8, they'll write an argumentative essay. And then they will only have a unit assessment for Unit 7. So we see we do not have a unit assessment for 8. And when we look at Unit 9, again, it's that end of year assessment, but we do map, which is required. And so this end of year assessment is optional. If your campus has been doing them, they may require you to do that. In the clarity documents, we want to highlight Amplify Alive. Amplify Alive is where we have taken science models to bring that unit to life. So for example, for the geology unit, since they will be studying the Earth's layers in the Amplify Alive kit, which should have been delivered to your campuses. It's not one per teacher. I believe it's one kit per campus. So on your campus somewhere, you have these science manipulatives that you're able to check out and then return. And as part of the Unit 7, we see the Earth's layers. So as you're going through the unit, here's a manipulative or a model that can be shown to students. And then there's going to be another one in Unit 8, and this is going to be a wind turbine model. And so for that unit, you're able to check out that model, read about wind turbines, about energy, and then have a model to show as well. So I want you to take a moment and think about how could you utilize these science manipulatives within your unit if your unit contains an Amplify Alive product? So think about how could you utilize these science manipulatives into your lesson. You can either come off mute or write it in the chat.
For me, I think within the units, how I would utilize the manipulatives will be where typically in our other genres of reading, we do a lot of turn and talking. I think I would just kind of do like a lot of collaboration, kind of help developing understanding of science. And I think that the manipulatives would kind of help provide more resources to allowing it to stick, being that it's a different way of reading than they're normally seeing.
Hi. So you would aid it in the process of the reading. As you're reading it, you could have it as a model to show. Perfect. Anyone else? And again, you can drop it in the chat. And what I'm asking is, how could you utilize the Amplify Alive manipulatives within your lesson if your unit contains Amplify Alive? And again, we're seeing most of these in our science unit. So for third grade, we don't have any Amplify Alives to highlight, but we do for fourth grade, we have 2 units that contain them. And then I'm going to click along. And we see a fossil kit for 5th grade. So we know Unit 8 is going to be about physical and chemical matter regarding fossils. It's a whole reader about fossils, explorations, and the changing of elements and compounds. So we know that that's going to be that's available to you on your campus. Again, if you have not seen these on your campus, I would get with your textbook coordinator or whoever takes in the packages for your school to see where these are, because they should have been delivered to your campuses already, is what we're told, and we just want to make sure you have them.
I am not familiar with this fossil kit. I don't teach 5th grade, but I'm just curious, is this a consumable product or is it?
No, it's a non-consumable. So what we did was we bought, the science department actually helped buy these manipulatives, and they're sending the kits out to the school. And it was going to be of like a checkout system where you could check them out from whoever has them at your campus to borrow them, and then you would return them back. You would put them together to show the students, and then you would return them back so that they could be used the following year. So these are pretty sturdy manipulatives. So I know the picture doesn't really do it justice, but they're pretty sturdy manipulatives, tangible objects, like hard plastic, so that they could be reused. But we do know they were delivered to campuses, and it's just a matter, if you haven't seen these, to get with an administrator, preferably one over textbooks, and see if they have it, or check with the front office if any of these packages came in through them. Okay, and then just to note that only Unit 8 will have a unit assessment for 5th grade. So that's something that you want to note in your notes if you teach 5th grade, so that 9 and 10, again, 10 is that end of year assessment, and that again is optional. All right. Any questions before we move on? There is not an online component to it. So what we'll have in the Clarity document is we'll have, like, it looks like it's online, but it's basically just a link to the picture of what you should have received. So it's a physical kit. There's no online component with it. If you see in our Clarity documents that there's links in there to Amplify Alive, those links are just showing you what you should have received. Thank you for asking. So here's our next question. Which unit do you think your students will enjoy the most? Which do you think might be challenging for them? Think about that, and then you can either come off mute or drop in the chat which unit you think your students will enjoy the most, and which do you think they might find challenging?
I see potential in all 3 units for 4th grade. It's different. They like different. The only thing challenging that I am still seeing to be an occurring situation is like the differentiation of writing. So like the information, like, you know, how to pull evidence to write informational text, and then argumentative, like how do I state it? What do I need? So I think the writing will be more challenging as the actual reading itself.
Okay, so we're finding reading to be more enjoyment, and then writing a little bit of a challenge right now. Okay, I think you're not alone when you say that. I know, students pulling that evidence is kind of difficult sometimes. Well, difficult a lot of times for them. So we think so in the chat, my students will enjoy the jazz unit. The context clue skill will be the most challenging to my students. Yeah, so if we remember some data that's come in. We know that context clues is a challenge across the district. So I can see that also being a challenge. But don't worry, because they're all opportunities to still hone in on their writing and on those context clues. One thing I think I didn't mention that I kind of want to go back and mention is at the bottom of these, you'll see essential questions. But under those, you'll see the synonyms and antonyms lessons. So if there are additional lessons that went with your unit, we went ahead and linked them on the preview. And so I say that because, let me go back. So we have compound words, homophones, root words. So as you're teaching these components, I wanted you to be able to visibly get to the additional lessons that Amplify provides that explicitly teaches that skill. And here we have compound word lessons, common prefix lessons, common suffix lessons. So if those are all things that your students are having a challenge with, those are additional lessons that we went ahead and linked right here. And they're available on online on Amplify. They're at the bottom called additional resources. I just know sometimes when we're doing all the things, it's hard for us to scroll further down and see what else is there. So I went ahead and just highlighted them on here for easy access, if that's something that you think you could use in your classroom. Okay, so that brings us to our success criteria 2, which is I can use SCR writing prompts in my instruction. So we know that grammar is going to be on, STAR, and we know that grammar is what our kids struggle with. So, and according to our data from last STAR, we know that all the SCRs, not saying that that's going to happen this year, because remember, just because one year it happens doesn't mean it's going to happen the same the next year, but we just want to keep this in mind that last year, all the SCR opportunities were writing. So if you have not been practicing SCR writing, now is a time you want to implement some of those opportunities for your students. Okay, so what we're going to do is let's look at a check for understanding in 3rd grade. This is from 3rd grade, Unit 9, Lesson 2. And so we see that one of the standards that will be covered is 3.11 DX, which is commas in a series. The check for understanding is on page 55 of the teacher guide. And what I was thinking when I saw this is, okay, I see what they put there, place commas where needed, right? But to me, if I am going ahead and I am trying to be proactive and trying to, yes, give my students tier 1 instruction, but also want them to see those opportunities that we can link to STAR, I want to go ahead and embed those types of stems into my instruction so students know how to answer those questions when they get to our STAR test. So what I ended up doing is I just simply put the first sentence as 1 and the second one as 2. I would definitely would rewrite it probably on a new slide. So if you are familiar with the Amplify visuals and you want to embed this check for understanding, you can always make a copy and add your own slide in there. So I would set it up as sentence 1 and sentence 2. I would use my stems that I have here and see which one goes with what they're asking for. And so then I came up with sentence 1 needs to be revised. In the space provided, rewrite sentence 1 in a clear and effective way. And then I put sentence 1 there as part of the question. So that's something that I could do to rework this question. So this is just the reworking of the question. Obviously my answer is right here because it already gave me my answer, but I wouldn't show this to students. I would just show them the sentence 1 and sentence 2. If I wanted to do another one, I could for sentence 2. Okay. So on that note, what I want y'all to do, and I've dropped the participant guide again, and I can drop it Actually, I'll drop it one more time because I see that there are people that have joined us. And the next part, you'll need this participant guide if you haven't already accessed it yet. So I dropped it one more time. Because now I want you to practice finding an opportunity in an upcoming Amplify unit. It can be under writing, language, or grammar section of that lesson. It just depends on how that unit, on how that lesson is written. Sometimes you'll find them under writing, language, or the grammar. To embed a writing SCR using the question stems provided. This is going to be in your participant guide. Everything is linked from your Focus IPC to the stems. So I will give you about 5 minutes to peruse through those and find an opportunity where we could embed or where you could embed an SCR writing. So this STEM document is created by the Reading Language Arts Department, and we get these from the Release Star, the practice star that was on the online platform where you can practice on the Pearson website. It's through TEA, but then it takes you to an online platform where you can practice. So this document we created in the Reading Language Arts Department, and every year we just add to it. So for next year, you definitely want to keep this one, but for next year, we'll update it to whatever SCR opportunities they give us. Right, so that was 2 more minutes. Who wants to share out an opportunity they found on how they could embed a writing SCR? You can just put it in the chat or you can come off mute, whichever.
In 3rd grade, right after break, lesson 9, there's an opportunity for opinion writing.
Okay, nice. Okay, so we saw in lesson 9, right after break, that we're going to have some opinion writing in there, and maybe we can embed some of these writing SCRs there. So awesome.
I can appreciate for 4th grade. I have noticed here there are more SCR opportunities, ECR opportunities that's embedded in the ICP, like internalizing the plan. So it's like there's one in every lesson. So there's that continuous practice.
Yeah, so we see that the opportunities that are already embedded. And so in the chat, we see grade 5, Q4, week 1 on unit 8. In the box provided, combine the ideas in sentences 1 and 2 to create one clear and effective sentence. Awesome. And then they provided sentence 1 and 2, and then also the answer. Awesome. Yeah. So we're seeing more of these opportunities coming up, especially after the break, where they're going to focus more on writing, where you can find those opportunities to embed those writing SCRs. We up to this point, I know we were doing a lot of reading SCRs, but we cannot forget about our writing SCRs. And then it gives us some great grammar practice with some of the lessons that they've already learned on grammar through Amplify. Okay, and then in unit 7 in 4th grade, the exit tickets to either shorten or even extend for longer responses. Yeah, so some of the exit tickets might have those opportunities as well. Thank you for pointing that out. All right, so any questions before we continue our journey through, we see lesson 9 2 for unit 8 in 5th grade. So we're finding those opportunities. They're there. All we just have to do is make them embed those question stems for them. Awesome. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, then we'll continue on this journey. All right, so for success criteria 3, I can prioritize questions within the lessons to help with pacing. And so here's where we talk about how Amplify is responding to data. So we have taken MAP middle of year. You have your unit assessments from Amplify. You have the WFAs. And then I think recently we did Star Simulator, or some of y'all are in the process of doing Star Simulator. So we have all these data pieces, and the data is telling us, oh, we really need help. And I can just say for MAP 3rd grade and 4th grade specifically, we really need help with context clues. That is something that that's challenging for our kids. So how do we use Amplify to respond to this data? We did a whole training on it, but I'm going to just give you a brief synopsis of that so that we can see how can we, prioritize those questions that we know are tied to skills that our students are struggling with. So the first thing you'll need to do is you're going to have to know your data for your class, for your students, whether that be MAP data, Amplify data in the form of WFAs or end of unit assessments or Star Simulator. Any of that data that you currently have is all valid. The second thing that you'll need is the question stems on this link. So you want to locate corresponding question stems on this link. This is just to show you what the star stems look like while we're prioritizing questions. And if we need to switch it to be more star-like, this is just number 2, just kind of helps us with creating those questions to be more star-like at this time. And then 3, you want to use the question stems to ask a question for an upcoming unit. So we're doing 2 different things. I know it's like we're juggling a lot of things. You're going to learn how to use your data to prioritize questions, but we're also going to use them to, if there is a question that Amplify gives us, but we want it to become more star-like, we're going to use our IQ from Lead Forward to help us with that. Okay. Now, let me just model to you what I'm asking for before I let you work on your own. So at our last QCT, we talked about frequently taught TEKS versus assessed TEKS. So we see that here are the frequently taught TEKS coming up. Here's what's going to be assessed. And so we use that to drive a lot of our focus. This is important because we want to make sure that our assessed TEKS are being hit, that we are prioritizing any question that's coming from our assessed TEKS. But we also don't want to ignore, and then we see our frequently taught TEKS, which helps us to know that, okay, even though they didn't hit it the first time, I see it's coming up in 2 more lessons. So that will help me as I prioritize which questions I want to ask now. So this is just to show, like, if there's just that one question and we know it's that one skill and it's only going to be taught in that one lesson, we want to make sure that we get to it through that lesson. So that's what we mean by prioritizing standards. Another thing we use is a Q3 blueprint, we use our blueprint. So this particular example is from 3rd grade Amplify Q3. I used a past example just to model with. You're going to be looking at an upcoming example. And so what I know is that I know my students are struggling with context clues. They are struggling with context clues because my MAP data showed me that. And then even if my WFAs were a little low in that. So that is how I chose that focus. So here I see in an upcoming lesson, it says, based on the context of the sentence, who can tell me what bold means? So that's 3.3b. And then there's the little blurb that matches it. Well, I want to be able to highlight this question because it's all about context clues and I know my students are struggling with it. But I'm going to rework that question a bit just because I want to make sure that they're getting it in a way that they're going to see on STAR. So I've reworked that question to say, what does the word bold mean in paragraph 3? And how I get paragraph numbers is that I actually go on the page I use the page that text is on where that question pops up in my lesson guide, and I'll just count however many paragraphs are on that particular page to get a paragraph number. That just kind of helps so they can focus in, so my students can focus in on where I'm asking. Because sometimes they're bolded, but Amplify doesn't bold all of them, even though they're asking a question on it. I've noticed they don't. So I just go ahead and make sure that I hone them in on where I want them by providing a paragraph number. Okay, so that's one thing I do is I rework questions to be able to be more STAR-like to help my students with 3.3B. Again, I chose that because it was low on data and also because it appears 3 times in the in the unit assessment that's happening at the end of this unit. So I really want to prioritize. If you look at number of items, I want to prioritize the ones that we're going to see frequently on there. Okay, now I notice that in my upcoming lesson, I have 7 questions. 7 questions they want us to discuss after the read aloud. So I can do one of 2 things. If I feel I need all 7 of these questions because that's how I feel, I just need all 7 of them, then one thing you could do with all 7 of these questions is you could sprinkle them out throughout the read aloud, which means right when you see that they're asking about this question or that they've got topics on this question that you read, you can just embed that question throughout the text so that you don't have to wait to the end of the read aloud to ask all 7 questions. So that's one way we can navigate it if you just really, really, really want to ask all 7 of those questions. Or you can prioritize questions by what are these questions saying? What knowledge do I know my students need and what skills do I know my students need by the end of the unit? So when I look at it that way, I see, oh, I know on the end of unit assessment, they're going to be reading about Christopher Columbus and how he was a salesman. So they really need to know, and I know that involves the king and queen of Spain. So I know I want them to get that good background knowledge on Christopher Columbus and who actually sponsored his trip, because I think they can transfer that knowledge to their end of unit assessment when they learn about him being a salesman and also still working for the king and queen of Spain. That will provide them with some great background knowledge. Question 2, I also want my students to understand like how the first interactions with the Tano when he met the Native Americans, how that went, how that played out so that they're aware. So I really want them to understand first who sponsored his trip, and second, how his interactions with the Native Americans was, because that all is going to transfer to what they're going to read at the end of unit assessment. Now, I'm not saying that 3 and 4 are not important, or 3 is not important, but this kind of how did the Europeans and Tano communicate with each other? I can easily embed that in question 2 because we know they don't speak each other's languages, or we know that they don't speak each other's languages. I could tell the students, well, they don't speak each other's languages, or how do you think he communicated? So we could ask that like that, or really, when I looked at the end of unit assessment, it didn't really ask about language. So I decided not to put that one in. And then another question that I wanted to focus on is the summary one. How would you summarize the central ideas or important points of today's read aloud? I like this one because 1, summarization is always low for my students, historically low for my students. It also touches on they need to know central idea and important points. So I see multiple skills within this one question that won't only help them for end of unit, but will also help them on STAR. So if I had to pick, these 3 questions would be my best questions to prioritize when I'm teaching my unit. Again, question 4 and 5 and 6, they're not bad questions. They're just all about his voyage, and we're going to get that through the summary question. We know he's going on a voyage. What I could do with questions 4, 5, and 6 is I could use them as scaffold questions. So if my students who are struggling to get the main points from their summary, I could give them question 4, 5, and 6 as a scaffold, but some of my babies who don't need that scaffold, I won't give them those questions. They can easily just give me a summary and we're done with it. So that is how you could use the questions that you don't use out loud. But we were able to cut down 7 questions to the main 3 that's going to be priority because they will be on end of unit and the unit assessment, And we know that they're going to be tested multiple times within that unit assessment. Any questions regarding what I just showed you or information I just shared with you? Okay. No worries. And if you have questions, just put them in the chat as well. You don't have to come off mute. I do understand it's, just a lot to take in, and but I do want you to let me know if there's any questions that I can help you with, because now it's your turn to practice. What I want you to do is I want you to use the IQ link, and I linked that in your participant guide to help you either 1, rewrite questions, or 2, you just want to prioritize questions based on data or upcoming assessments. So you don't have to do both. You can do one of 2 things. You can do 1, go through your upcoming lesson and rework questions using the IQ STEM webpage, or 2, you can prioritize questions, meaning what I just did, that second part is where I took 7 questions and I moved it down to 3 because they were very intentional with what I needed my students to get for their unit assessment. So the directions are there. In your participant guide, you will have your Focus IPC link and your blueprint. I'm going to give you about 5 to 7 minutes to be able to work, and then we'll share out. Again, you're just choosing to do one because it's a lot of things. So you can either do number 1, which is you're just finding questions to rewrite to make more STAR-like, because we know STAR is coming up and I want to be able to give my students an opportunity to see what that would look like on STAR. Or 2, I like the questions Amplify gives me. I don't want to rework any of them, but I want to prioritize them because I do believe 10 questions is a lot. So let me see how I can prioritize these questions. So those are your directions, and I will give you about 5 to 7 minutes. I'll check on you in 5 minutes, and then if we need extra time, we can always do the extra 2 minutes. So go ahead and locate these materials so that you can do one of 2 things. And just in case you came in, I dropped the participant guide one more time so that you're able to access those websites and those IPCs. Okay, so I'm noticing our time, and honestly, we just have to continue so that I can respect your time. Does anyone want to share anything that they did? Either you created a question or you were able to prioritize questions. Okay. Are there any questions about the process of doing that before we move on? All right. So we'll continue on. So I can give you the resources and then move on for the feedback. Okay. So number success criteria 4 is I can locate resources that can support me with my instruction. First and foremost, we want to highlight that we were able to put reading STAR days on there. Yes, we also know there is a math STAR. So if it's not on that first week, the second week of the window, there'll be another one for, we definitely put our reading one in there, but we definitely took into consideration that you have math and science for 5th grade and then reading and math. So on the second week, there will be another point where it says STAR. So we just want to let you know that we do know that testing is involved and is definitely part of what goes on in the campuses, and that we went ahead and we ensured that you had enough days. So on those days, there won't be a Amplify lesson. We were able to rework it to where you're still getting your Amplify lessons. They're just not going to be on those days. Okay. Also, if you're not familiar with the Amplify Intervention Toolkit, just want to make sure that you know that it exists. So this is a toolkit that you can access through your portal for Amplify through Clever. So here's the K through 5, and then it will be our elementary literacy program. This is where the link is at for that. So this just shows you where to find that link, and it's through your dashboard with Amplify. And what is on that toolkit? Well, that toolkit is for students who are still struggling with reading comprehension, but it may be more that they are struggling with phonics, phonemic awareness, letter sound knowledge, simple patterns, complex patterns, and all fluency, and all of this we know will affect their reading comprehension. But we need extra lessons for them. This toolkit provides you with the lessons for those students who are just needing a little more than what iReady gives you. Okay. Here are all the RLA resources that are available, and they're linked to the slide, so I will share it at the end. And so this is our STAR Padlet, STAR Redesign Padlet, all our Amplify Padlets, and of course our curriculum and PLCs in action and Curriculum Central. So that's where you can find all things RLA. And anything that goes with Amplify, such as tutorial videos, and anything that you can think of are on these resources. We also want you to know that their STAR webinars are coming up. It's actually tomorrow and the next day, 5th through 6th. It is linked on here to register. If you're interested in knowing how Amplify can help you with STAR, or specifically Amplify with STAR, hosted by Amplify. And I do believe that if you register, you're in the drawing for a t-shirt. And then we just want you to know that the PLC packages are available through Cornerstone. If you click on where it says PLC package, those are linked. It'll take you to a Cornerstone link. That is a course that is uploaded into Cornerstone, so you can only access it through Cornerstone. We also want you to be aware that curriculum camps are coming. So if you were with us this past year, we had 2 days of curriculum camps, and those are coming back again this summer. Be on the lookout for more information. Our RLA reminders, as always, if you ever have any questions, and we can help you with that, or you want to come to our office hours for Tuesday and Thursday, we can help you via email or if you call us. But if you want to meet in person, Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're on these links right here, and we're waiting for you to come and ask us anything you want to know, or if you want a little more help and practice on how to create those STAR stems or prioritizing questions, just hop on and someone is on to help you. Also, we just want you to be aware that we do have a Reading Language Arts newsletter that goes out. We try to do every 2 weeks. And so that is just highlighting the student experience. And then it also talks about all things RLA, such as events that are coming up, or any curriculum updates, any assessment updates. All of that is on that newsletter. And then here's us. So if you ever have any questions, like I said, and you can't pop on to office hours, you can definitely contact any of us on here via phone or email.